AI is redefining storytelling, audiobooks, and gaming. Synthetic voice will preserve legacies, empower creators, and may even fuel international crime syndicates. Dustin Blank is the head of partnerships at ElevenLabs and a key figure in advancing AI solutions surrounding voice cloning. ElevenLabs and Jerry Garcia's family collaborated to create the synthetic version of Garcia. Dustin, thank you for joining me on this episode of Some Future Day. Dustin Blank from ElevenLabs, I am so thrilled to have you as a guest on Some Future Day. How are you?
Great, Marc Beckman. I'm so excited to be here.
Dustin, so one of the first experiences for me in artificial intelligence was actually ElevenLabs. I found it as a result of being an owner of an advertising agency, exceptionally useful as a tool in the advertising space. I'm curious if you could take a minute, though, back up and tell the audience what ElevenLabs is and how it came into existence.
Absolutely. So ElevenLabs has been around for about 2.5 years, and it was started by two best friends. They grew up together in Poland, went to high school together, and they stayed in touch after high school and ended up going and working at Google and Palantir. And they really were committed to this idea of breaking down content barriers. And the reason for that was a lot of their experience growing up and being best friends in high school was based around media and entertainment. And the funny thing about Poland is that when you watch movies imported from the US, there's actually only one voiceover narrator dubbing all of the characters. So that's one male, usually in his 60s voice, doing the kid, the wife, the villain, everyone. It was just a terrible, terrible viewing experience. And so, later, 10 years later, they were, watching a dubbed movie back in London together, and they were like, there's got to be a better way around this. And so that's really the genesis of the company. How can they break down content barriers and make language universal?
So essentially what you're telling me is that English speaking films, like the most iconic in history, from Godfather and Scarface to Jaws and all of the Disney sweep, is dubbed in Poland with one voice, typically male, and that individual plays every single character in the film.
Yes. Yeah.
So the founders of ElevenLabs are loving film and entertainment, and they're like, this is bizarre. We need to solve this problem.
Yes, exactly.
So two friends with a tech background come together and they stand up this vertical.
Exactly. And so the beginning really was around this idea of multilingual audio. But it quickly expanded. So as of now, today, we do voice replicas. So being able to replicate or clone a voice with proper input so that you can use it for text to speech. Also today, we do speech to speech. So think of speech to speech as a voice changer. I can talk into ElevenLabs platform and put a voice over my voice so it sounds different. And then in addition to that, we also are doing audiobooks. We're working with movie studios. We really are doing the whole gambit of things right now.
So Dustin, we're going to get into all of that in detail in a second. I just want the viewers to understand you use two very specific AI voice generation terms of art.
Sure.
You said text to speech and speech to speech. So can you break it down? Like, first explain, how does text to speech work?
Sure. So text to speech at its most basic level is you're typing in your keyboard and then you want the output to be spoken in a human sounding voice. So that's it. You put an English phrase or really any phrase in any language, and you want it to be spoken in audio form.
And then for speech to speech?
Speech to speech is voice changing. So the idea there is I can speak into ElevenLabs and I can put another voice over it so that I sound different like that other voice. So for example, I could say, hello, how are you into ElevenLabs? And then if I had a voice replica of someone, a British woman, or for example, you, Mark, I could make it sound like you were saying that with the same intonation.
That's incredible. So why would anybody or any company want to use that service? What is so special about that? Why do I need that?
So we have two different types of customers, and they come to us for really a variety of reasons. So on one hand, we have creators. Think of the creator economy, YouTubers, TikTokers, um, anyone who is creating their own content and distributing it to their own audience. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have enterprise customers. So our current stat is that we work with over 50% of S&P 500 companies in one way or another. And they're using these technologies in a variety of ways. One could be anywhere from adding voiceover to videos for that creators do. Opposed to going to the studio, they want to just be able to really easily create a voiceover for their content. Another one could be advertisements or brand deals. So creating that type of content with their voice replica.
I see.
And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have things like call centers. So we have conversational AI, where opposed to talking to a human agent, you can get really easy questions answered by AI agents.
Those AI agents in call centers sometimes frustrate me. I got to be honest with you. Do you think that we'll be at a point imminently where the AI agents in call centers will create a more palatable experience for guys like me?
I think I think it's still early days, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's going to completely replace. In fact, I don't think it will completely replace. I think it will enhance and create a better customer experience for someone like you. But ultimately, there will be a human in the mix or a human in the loop somehow enhancing the process with
So
an assist from an AI agent.
So ElevenLabs is like it's remarkable to me. I didn't realize it's only been around, you said, for 2.5 years. I mean,
Yeah.
the business is super impressive. You just mentioned that some of the biggest S&P companies are already using the technology, and I know that the company has been extremely successful at fundraising. Can you talk a little bit about which corporations are already adopting the technology and the recent capital raise for the company?
Sure. So there's a lot of different companies and a lot of different types of industries that use us right now. I mean, on one end, we have big media companies using us, like Disney, for some of their pre and post production, um, experimenting with us in a lot of ways. We are also in their accelerator program, and they are investors in us.
Oh, wow.
And on the other end of the spectrum, we have HarperCollins, for example, using us to create audiobooks of their backlist titles, right? So titles that normally wouldn't get the audiobook treatment, bringing those books to life with audio that wasn't really possible before because of the expense. And so those are just kind of two examples of media companies that are using us right now. But we also, are working with a variety of other industries, from medical to food industry, think drive-throughs, to telecom companies. It's really growing, and the use cases are expanding every day, so to speak.
Yeah, super impressive. And like I mentioned, the fundraising piece of it has just been, very, very high profile, very, very successful. How much money does Eleven Labs have in its coffers from fundraising to date?
Well,
I know it's been public, so that's why
yeah,
I'm raising it.
we did just raise a big Series C round at a 3 billion plus valuation, and we're using all that money that we raised from this round really to put it towards our research and our models. So one of the interesting things around ElevenLabs is the fact that we built our own models. We have this great research team, and a lot of them who are creating these really best in class audio models to be used by our consumers. And that's kind of really what makes us stand apart. Some of the other things that we're going to be using the money for, of course, are compute and growing teams like the partnerships team, sales teams, et cetera.
So $3 billion valuation coupled with investors like Disney, you really are world class. 11 Labs truly is best in class, but there is competition, Dustin,
There is.
right? Other companies are out there doing text to speech to speech, synthetic AI generated voices. What is it about 11 Labs that beats the competition? Why are you better than the competition?
I think from the beginning, what has really made ElevenLabs stand out, at least from my perspective, is the fact that we do build our own research models, and we have always really been committed to quality first. Quality in terms of the sound of the human voices being the most realistic, being the most human sounding. We've always been committed to doing that and not releasing new products unless they are meeting that very, very high standard and that high bar.
I see. I see. So let's talk about some of the business sectors that you touched on briefly. You mentioned publishing. How do you see the creation of AI generated speech radically altering the publishing industry?
I think that there's a couple ways with which I see it altering the industry. The first one is the democratization of books. A lot of people around the world right now, not everyone can read. Not everyone is literate. So being able to turn books that normally wouldn't be able to be enjoyed by everyone into audio experiences is huge. So that's one. And to be able to do it cheaply with AI and synthetic voices would be great. Another area which I think is going to be so exciting is the ability to make audiobooks come alive in ways that were not possible before. Imagine reading or listening to the opening of a book and hearing it in different character voices. So there's the narrator voice, then you hear a different voice for the female protagonist, and then a different
Right.
voice for the kid. But then all of a sudden, there's a line about birds chirping, and then birds chirping kind of comes in.
So sound effects.
Yeah. And it really can create this incredible audio experience that just wasn't possible before AI. And I think that's going to be very exciting.
My name is Judy Garland. Happy to be here and be a guest on the show. What do you want to talk about today?
Judy, I just want to know what it was like literally to meet the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, honey, you know I can't tell you about meeting the Wizard of Oz. That's a secret I can't reveal, but I can tell you that filming the Wizard of Oz was a magical experience. It was such hard work, but I was so happy to be a part of it. It was a dream come true.
How long did it take you to film the movie?
Well, it took about 2 years to film the movie, but it felt like a lifetime. We filmed in color, which was very new at the time, and there were so many scenes with special effects. It was a lot of work, but it was worth it. It was a magical experience. I'll never forget it.
Judy, how did you get your daughter, Liza Minnelli, to be such an incredible actor?
Oh, honey, Liza's talent is all her own. She's a natural. I was so proud of her when she was in cabaret. She was so talented and she worked so hard. I think she's a wonderful actress, and I'm so grateful that she's my daughter.
Judy, what do you think the biggest pitfall in your career was?
Well, honey, I think the biggest pitfall in my career was probably my struggles with addiction. It was something that I fought for a long time, and it really affected my work, but I'm grateful that I was able to get help. And I'm so proud of the work that I was able to do after that. I think that's what makes me the most proud of my career, my ability to overcome those challenges.
Like what? What other work did you do after Wizard of Oz?
Oh, honey, after The Wizard of Oz, I did so many things. I starred in a lot of musicals like Meet Me in St. Louis Easter Parade and Annie Get Your Gun. I also did some dramatic films like A Star is Born and Judgment at Nuremberg. I was always trying to challenge myself and do different things. I was so lucky to have had such a wonderful career.
Judy, you're the hottest. Thanks for talking to me today.
Oh, honey, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, too. It's been a long time since I've been on a podcast. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm always happy to talk about my career and my life. It's been a wild ride. Take care.
Dustin, I read at one point that you guys collaborated with or developed a strategic alliance with Pika, the text to video AI. And I think it's really interesting because it all this talk with regards to Disney and knowing the background with Pika, it makes me start to think, how far off are we from feature films being launched in the United States that have, full on, entirely 100% synthetic voices? Is that something that could happen now?
I think that it can happen now. Whether people want it to happen now is another story. Right now, people are creating amazing YouTube videos all the time and TikTok videos with synthetic characters, with animated characters. But when you're talking about an industry, which I think like big worldwide releases, I think we're at a point where we're starting to experiment with using it, but I don't think we're ready for an entire movie quite yet.
What about with all those strikes, by the way? I thought for sure that you guys could step in and take a
Yes.
lot of that. I personally, I think, Dustin, that the use of synthetic speech, of AI generated speech in feature films and docu-series across the board is going to become ubiquitous imminently. I think it's an issue of, I know there are other issues
Yes.
regarding compute, storage, et cetera. I know that's something that your company is focused on as well, but I strongly believe that synthetic voices are going to be ubiquitous in the near future. I also believe that AI generated video is going to take over Hollywood in a massive way very, very soon.
I think the hope is, I think what we really hope as at ElevenLabs is that like we're used as a storytelling tool that partners with the industry, partners with actors, voiceover artists, authors, writers, animators to help enhance the product. So I think if you like look at our interface, everything about it is built intuitively to help that process and enhance those workflows. So we're all for partnering with them to help create more content, better storytelling, however we can. And I think the technology is there to do that. I think some of the rules and regulations around this space still need to be figured out for certain of the legacy media companies to feel um, fully comfortable putting out a huge new movie release. But I think hopefully we'll get there, and we're here to partner with them along the way.
Well, you know what? Part of the reason I am bullish about synthetic
Yeah,
voice in films is because if you look at the past 3 or 4 years, literally at the top 10 highest grossing films, most of them are remakes, right? They're coming out. So at some point,
it's true.
the celebrity doesn't need to go in the studio. If it's an animated film and it's like the number one film in the country and it's like the second, third, or fourth version of the original, that celebrity really won't need to spend the time. They could sit on their couch and enjoy their day or be with their family or create, income in a different way. I really think that we are there now. Don't you agree?
I I think that we're more at what I would like to see happen before that point is taking storytelling, taking movies, taking completed projects, and allowing AI to get it to more places around the world through our dubbing, through being able to take audio and put it through ElevenLabs and have the audio come out in the same intonation, the same emotionality, the same tone, but in a different language, in a different country. Like that's to me is the best next step. Taking a movie that just came out and, putting it into French, but having the same actors and actresses voice it, but in a different language. To me, that's a really exciting prospect because one, it allows the actors and actresses who voice those original characters to travel around the world and have their performance experienced in a different language. Two, it allows the directors, everyone for their vision to come to life exactly how they envisioned it when they made the film in the first place. And to me, like that's a scenario that is extremely artist friendly. It's us partnering together and it's us getting and breaking down content barriers like the original mission of the company was.
Dustin, what do you think if you focus on the if you focus on the advertising industry, what do you think is the number one biggest gain that the advertising industry can have through the use of synthetic voice now, currently, like immediately?
I would like to 100% see more of AI dubbing, similar to what I was just talking about. So taking advertisements and taking those existing advertisements and putting them into other languages around the world. So that will save so much cost around creative teams around the world. It will allow the original message to stay consistent, which is so hard to do for global products. I think that's something that they should be doing now. Another thing that I think could be really useful, especially in the artists and celebrity space, is promos. Think about when a musician is doing a tour and they have to do all those promo reads to promote a tour with all of those radio stations, with all of those different individualized, specific local market reads. What if you could use AI to help make that process easier? So one, the actual end listener feels that they are being spoken to in their localized market. And on the other end, it allows the artist or the celebrity to connect more closely to that end listener in ways that wasn't possible before AI.
Dustin, could it go further? I know that you and I have been talking about leveraging the technology together for some of my clients in the
Yeah.
advertising space to use in spaces, for example, on X. So, can a high profile celebrity individual who's launching a new product go into those formats, local radio stations, X spaces, and beyond? Can you stand up an AI agent and have the AI agent interacting with all of the local media? Is it possible to train an AI agent specifically on whatever it is that that individual, that celebrity is promoting at that time period?
It is. So we have something called conversational agents. And what it allows you to do is to leverage the AI replica that you have created on ElevenLabs. So that's the voice, the sound. And then you can use different LLMs in the market to train that or prompt that voice so that it is an agent in a certain way, answering questions in a certain way based on the prompts in place. So, for example, for you, Mark, if you wanted to create, a Marc Beckman, some future day AI agent, we could train that. We can use your voice that we created and replicated, and then train that agent on everything in your book. And then you could put that on Twitter, put that on X, or put that wherever you want your fans to engage, and they can interact and ask questions about that book, anything in that book, and they can hear the response in audio from you directly. Of course, one of the things that is really important about when you're putting your voice out there is putting the proper guardrails in place. We can prompt it so it says things like "no politics" or "stay away from anything that could be controversial." Of course, when you put those guardrails on, you get a mixed response. So you have to really tweak the agent until you feel like it accomplishes what you want.
So, Dustin, will everyone on the planet have their own AI agent at some point?
Yes.
I love it. And will that AI agent then be trained to go out and, do monotonous tasks that we all hate, buy a new pair of shoes, finish my homework, kick out these 20 emails, and also appear on this local radio station promoting my new book?
Um, I think why not? I think it can do.
Right.
I think it totally can.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. Dustin, something that I really appreciate with you as an individual personally, I know you're a caring, thoughtful
Yeah.
person, and you've highlighted some of the pro-social uses
Yeah.
of synthetic voices, of AI generated speech. And ElevenLabs is actually very, very big in that. For example, I know that one area that you've concentrated on so far is for patients who suffer from ALS, for example. Can you talk a little bit about ElevenLabs' commitment to pro-social initiatives and how you're helping individuals who might have some sort of impediment to their own speech?
Sure. I mean, this is one of the most exciting things about working at ElevenLabs, that we discovered ElevenLabs being an amazing use case for this entire accessibility industry that wasn't meant to be. It just kind of happened naturally. We found out pretty early on in this company's journey that people who had different degenerative diseases that affected their voice, such as ALS or mouth cancer or MSA, where they would either lose their ability to speak 100% or lose their ability to, talk as they normally did, were really benefiting from using ElevenLabs. So the way it works is really that some of these folks with these degenerative diseases would create voice replicas using past recordings of audio, whether it's 30 seconds, they have that, or 30 minutes, if they're lucky to have that, to create a voice replica that sounds like them. And then they're able to use assistive devices like eye trackers, or if they're able to still type on their ElevenLabs phone or through the website to speak and communicate in their original voice. And so our commitment here is to give anyone who has those diseases lifetime free subscription to ElevenLabs so that they can continue to speak with their families, their caregivers, their communities, and hopefully they'll be less isolated because of that.
That's super empowering and really important, really impressive. Kudos to you and the ElevenLabs team. That's incredible, Dustin.
It's a great mission, and it's something that the entire team at ElevenLabs is behind.
My name is Deepak Chopra. Happy to be here and be a guest on the show.
Deepak, welcome to my show, Some Future Day. How are you?
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I'm always happy to explore the possibilities of the future, and I'm excited to see what we can discuss today.
Deepak, I have to ask you, I am totally stressed out. I've been living on espresso for days. I haven't slept in at least a week. What do you suggest I do to rebalance?
Mark, I hear you. It sounds like you're in a state of imbalance, and that's not conducive to living a fulfilling life. The first step is to acknowledge that you're not alone. Many people struggle with stress and sleeplessness. The key is to find ways to bring your mind and body back into harmony. You mentioned you've been living on espresso. That's a sign that you're relying on external stimulants to keep you going. Instead, I encourage you to turn inward and explore the power of your own inner resources. Start by taking a few deep breaths. Focus on your breath and allow it to calm your mind and body. You can also try practicing meditation or yoga. These practices can help to quiet the mind and promote relaxation. And most importantly, Mark, make sure you're getting enough sleep. Sleep is essential for our physical and mental well-being. Aim for 7 to 8 hours of sleep each night.
7 to 8 hours? That's crazy.
I understand, Mark. It can seem like a lot, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed. But trust me, your body needs that time to rest and recharge.
Oh, I totally trust you.
That's great to hear, Mark. Remember, you are not alone in this.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Mark.
Deepak, it's been great having you on Some Future Day today. I end every single show with each guest the same way. I create a leading question and the guest finishes the question. Are you game for playing?
Of course, Mark.
Okay. Deepak, in some future day, the world will become more balanced by
embracing the interconnectedness of all things.
Deepak, I love you.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure being on your show. I hope our conversation has provided some valuable insights for your listeners. Remember, the future is what we make it. Let's create a future filled with peace, harmony, and well-being.
So, Dustin, let's talk a little bit about the dark side of AI generated voices.
Okay.
I know, for example, that your organization has been super ethical. I've interacted, full disclosure, like I've been interacting with ElevenLabs for a couple of different clients on different projects, and I have a lot of trust and faith with regards to not just the guardrails that you're saying that you'd set up as it relates to training and artificial intelligence, but I believe your organization is also you have a good barometer with regards to ethics, and therefore you're instituting certain safeguards surrounding ethical concerns. Can you talk a little bit about some of the ethical concerns that, just generally speaking, come into play with AI generated voice, and then what ElevenLabs is doing to make sure that those issues are not misused?
Sure. I think that one of the things that is important to ElevenLabs is that we operate ethically and that we put the right guardrails in place to make that happen. So, for example, one of the things that was important to us around, for example, the election, the most recent election, was making sure that there wasn't like disinformation out there and things like that. So the safety team at ElevenLabs created a political classifier to block the generation of certain audio that had text to speech phrases that could be misconstrued or construed as political. Another thing that we do is we have content moderation. So we point to different LLMs when people are generating speech to make sure that they're not violating our terms of services. So if they are, then that person will be warned and then later banned. Another thing that is important to us is that we have a tool that anyone can go to at ElevenLabs to identify if content or audio was created with ElevenLabs. So the idea behind that is to help people identify if audio is synthetic from ElevenLabs or not. And that's available. And so those are just some of the things that we're doing to help the space and lead in this space.
So what happens then legally? Let's say, for example, I team up with you, you
Yeah.
create a synthetic version of my voice,
Yes.
and then third party actors, let's say nefarious, bad actors, go ahead and build on top of my voice situations that might be committing fraud or preying on the elderly or whatever it might be. Like, how do you interact then with that type of a scenario?
So I guess that scenario wouldn't necessarily, I don't know how that scenario would happen, right? Because if you're creating a voice replica, it really should live in your account,
Right.
and be kept safely under your watch or only shared with people that you trust. So to answer that question, it's not like when we're creating a voice replica of you, Mark, we're putting it on our public library where anyone can access and create advertisements with, right?
Let's go under the premise that an individual cannot copyright their own voice. I believe that that's the law. We could double check on it. We'll double check on it.
Okay.
But here's the question to you.
He'll double check on it.
High profile person, one of the most famous people in the world. We saw last night during the Super Bowl halftime show, Kendrick Lamar. He
Yeah.
comes out, and the entire world wants to now, because he's so buzzy, he's in the zeitgeist. Everybody wants to get his voice recorded. So a couple of people go and they record his voice and they create music with it, and they stream it off of one of the big streamers like Spotify, and they generate income off of it. Is that fair play?
No.
That's it? Just a straight up no? Because we've seen it, right? We saw it with The Weeknd and Drake. What happened in that instance?
I mean, with what you're describing, then it sounds like that person would then be, claiming that, look, I'm not a lawyer here, but my initial
Right.
gut reaction that is not legal to that is that would not be okay. One, because that person did not ask for Kendrick Lamar's consent. Two, they're probably advertising it as a Kendrick Lamar new song. That's his name, right? They
Right.
can't do that. So my initial gut is no, that is not okay. I think, though, it's an interesting question that you're getting at, which is in this new world, when things become easier to monetize and to replicate, how are people going to put guardrails around that? And the answer is, I think you have to be ethical about it. And I think you have to be ethical about it. And as a technology company, you have to insert the right safeguards.
So we're living in a time period where people are just not ethical, Dustin. You know that. So let's go back to your comment earlier with regards to politics. It's kind of interesting. I'm sure we'll see the use of synthetic voices in politics, where the opposing party might take the competition's voice and have her or him say something that will be less than appealing to the masses, and as a result, could tank an election. Do you anticipate that happening?
I think no one wants false information to be out there. And so whether it's a social media company who's in charge of distributing that, or the person, I think that there definitely needs to be conversations to be had about how to protect disinformation from being out there. And it's definitely something that is in the news all the time, about the difference between free speech and other areas. So personally, my point of view is, it's something that we all have to do our part to help protect against.
I agree. We need to come together as a community, which might be tough to do. Think in terms of, again, those bad actors. I alluded to it earlier. People that are perhaps not totally in the know about this new technology. The older generation, for example, the octogenarians, they receive a phone call with voice generated speech from their granddaughter saying, grandma, grandpa, I need $1 million wired to to this fund immediately. I think it's predictable that we'll see this happening. I know it's happened a little bit and it's been reported a little bit, but I anticipate we'll see an increase in these types of crimes.
Yes. I think that there's certain areas out there which are definitely scary right now, and we have to all be educating folks around it and creating new tools to prevent against it.
Did you hear about the fake Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, his fake surrender message that came out in around 2022?
I did not.
Yeah, apparently, like Zelensky, somebody created a synthetic audio file of his voice and released a surrender to the Russians all the way back now in 2022, which is pretty wild. Pretty wild. I can't speak right now. Another area that I think is interesting, worth exploring, is the idea of artificial intelligence and companionship. Older people who lose a loved one, who feel lonely. Where does synthetic voice come into play there?
So it's really interesting, this whole idea of companionship in AI. I think when ChatGPT first came out, people were, talking to it in different ways, and trying to prompt it to say certain things, be comforting. And I truly think we've only just scratched the surface there, because it has so many therapeutic and beneficial possibilities, whether it's from life coaching, whether it's from accountability coaches, to companionship, to being a conversationalist. I think that it's something that we've only scratched the surface of, and the voice component adds a whole other layer to these LLMs that do that. So to me,
it's so futuristic.
Yeah. I mean, I think even the idea of talking to yourself is interesting, right? Your own voice being your AI agent. I think that's pretty cool.
Could the AI agent train it? Can it train itself? Like, is there a way for the AI agent to become more intelligent? Like, can my AI agent be smarter than me? It will be, right? That's easy.
I think that I do not know. But I think that's the question, right? Are these AI LLMs going to be smarter than humans in the first place?
Yeah, I think there's a concern also with regards to not just political deep fakes, but journalistic deep fakes, right, Dustin? So I think in China, they stood up both video and audio of journalists, synthetic journalists reporting the news. And all of it was just propaganda. It was uncovered later that none of it was real. Did you hear about that?
I did not hear about that.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty wild.
Yes.
So it's interesting. So you guys are like way ahead of the curve. ElevenLabs is outpacing everybody, but yet you have these massive tech companies like Google and Meta, Microsoft, OpenAI. They're all putting billions and billions of dollars into this space. How does ElevenLabs create a moat for itself to compete against these giants?
I think just keep building world-class models. I think that's our focus, right? Our focus is on the research, keep building world-class models, keep creating great intuitive customer experiences for both enterprises but also creators. And that comes down to getting into workflows and making the experience to leverage and utilize AI audio as easy as possible.
Hi, Sir Laurence Olivier. Welcome to Some Future Day. How are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Beckman. I'm well, thank you. It is a pleasure to be here. What shall we discuss today?
I'm so curious about what you think the state of entertainment is today.
The state of entertainment today? A fascinating question. It is a landscape vastly different from the one I knew in my youth. The mediums have multiplied. The pace is relentless. And the reach is global. But the essence remains the same. To move, to inspire, to provoke. What are your thoughts, Mr. Beckman? Do you find this new age of entertainment fulfilling?
I think it's very fulfilling. However, I think artificial intelligence is going to radically change the entertainment industry. So my question to you is, how will you play a role in the future of entertainment?
An intriguing prospect. I must confess, I find the notion of artificial intelligence mimicking the human experience both fascinating and unsettling. To think that a machine could one day replicate the nuances of emotion, the complexities of human interaction, the very essence of what makes us human. It is a thought that both excites and frightens me. As for my role in this future, I cannot say with certainty, but I believe that the true art of acting, the ability to connect with an audience on a visceral level, will always be a human endeavor. Perhaps in this new age, my legacy will live on in the form of data, algorithms, and digital avatars. But I believe that the human spirit, the raw passion that drives us to create, will endure. What are your thoughts on this, Mr. Beckman?
I think it's interesting, but can I ask you a personal question?
Of course, Mr. Beckman, I'm always happy to share my thoughts and experiences.
Were you married?
Yes, Mr. Beckman, I was. Twice, in fact. My first marriage was to the actress Jill Esmond, a woman of great beauty and talent. We had a son, Tarquin, and our union lasted for many years. My second marriage was to Vivian Lee, a truly remarkable actress, a force of nature. Our relationship was intense, to say the least, but it was also a source of great passion and creativity. Do you have any other questions about my personal life?
No, I know you're very busy wherever you are, so I want to thank you for joining my show, Some Future Day.
Thank you, Mr. Beckman. It has been a pleasure. I wish you all the best in your endeavors. And remember, the future is a canvas upon which we all have the power to paint.
Dustin, one of the coolest things that you guys are doing is working with the estates of dead artists, dead individuals, and figuring out new ways to monetize. I know you've built out Judy Garland, Jerry Garcia, Deepak Chopra, Sir Laurence Olivier, amongst others. You can maybe share some of the bigger names, but how are you guys monetizing? Let's start with the dead, the deceased people.
Yeah.
How are you monetizing their voices?
So those voices that you just mentioned are a part of our iconic voices collection. And the idea there is we have this great reading app, right? That's completely free to all users as of now. And basically a user can come in and hear text to speech, whether it's books or notes from class, what have you, in the voices of their favorite ElevenLabs audio.
Very cool.
Audio AI voices, or in the voices of these iconic names that you just mentioned, and hopefully that you'll show some of them or to your audience. And so the idea there is that people want to hear stories in the voices of their choosing. People want to hear notes in the voices of their choosing. So we made partnerships with these estates. We're very excited about getting their their either family members or their loved ones back in front of the people who love them and exposing them to new audiences in the first place.
It's really fascinating. So you stand up new business verticals effectively with some of the most iconic voices, right? Like Sir Laurence Olivier, his family. I'm curious, like, how did they react when you first entered the conversation? Did they have to did they, there's no way they understood what you were talking about at the outset. So how do you like break it down to them? Like, how do they believe in it?
So, luckily all of these estates, have I would say great either managers or people who present them who have their best interests at heart, who can explain it to them. But one of the areas which, of course, most of these folks were concerned about would be will a iconic voice say something that would be extremely offensive to a larger population. And, we explained to them our moderation tools that we have in place to prevent something like that from happening. Another area that was of real concern was, okay, if they're reading, Pride and Prejudice or another public domain book, will that person then be able to download it and sell it somewhere else? And so, with our reading app, which these voices are on, they're only available to be listened to and streamed in real time, not creating new audiobooks with them and distributing it. That's a big difference between the iconic voices and all the other voices that we have available.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jerry Garcia has such a passionate fan base. The Deadheads are not just ubiquitous, but
Yes.
they are safeguarding
Yeah.
his legacy, man. It is a big deal.
Their family was they probably were, Jerry's wife and daughter were probably the two people who were most excited about doing this compared to all of them. I mean, although Liza Minnelli gave a great quote for Judy Garland saying how excited she was to do this, which was pretty cool for me. But Jerry's family was very excited about this. They're open to experimentation because at the end of the day, they reminded me that Jerry was very tech forward during his lifetime, extremely.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. And so this is something they felt like he would be very interested in doing, experimenting with. And, we're allowing that voice, Jerry's voice, to help with some of their public exhibitions and different things of that nature. So, and I think the deals that we struck with them were very fair. They're, short-term deals. They're not in perpetuity. And so I think both sides were happy at the end of it.
So with a community like the Grateful Dead fans, there must be some sensitivities, facing the community too, right? Like they all feel like the fan base needs to protect Jerry. So what do they get worked up about? What do they get upset
I
about?
think that's a very fair question. They do get worked up. Some do. Some are into it. They don't understand why the family would do that, right? They think it's a
Creepy?
more of like they think it's a greedy move, I would say.
Oh, wow.
But it's not. If they think that, then they don't need to listen to it, right? They can vote with their headphones. They don't need to listen to it. And so,
honestly, Dustin, it's such a value add. Like if I was walking through a Jerry Garcia immersive installation, including his artwork, and I had him curating not just the artwork, but the voice, like having his voice tell me and teach me what it is that I'm looking at, what inspired him. I mean, that seems like such a richer experience than just having a third party telling Jerry's story.
100%. And I do think one thing I want to highlight, and it's kind of like a thread that's been through this entire conversation, is by no means is ElevenLabs ever trying to say that these voices are the real person. Not trying to trick anyone by saying that that's Jerry Garcia or that's Judy Garland. That's not the idea here. It's to tell stories in a different way using synthetic voice, not pretend that it is that person. And so I do hope that gets communicated with the iconic voices to some of the people, the Jerry fans who didn't like it at first, who were kind of worked up. Some people loved it, but not everyone.
I see it, Dustin. I'm one of those people who love it for sure. I think that's super valuable. Tell me, Dustin, who like living people, living celebrities, high profile people from government and whatnot.
Sure.
Who's getting into the mix with ElevenLabs? Is there anyone that you could disclose?
Yeah, Deepak Chopra, for those who aren't aware, spiritual guru, has written,
Huge.
Not hundreds of books, almost 100 books. His teachings are worldwide. He is so into AI because he believes that it spreads its message, it's additive. It allows people to not only learn from him in new ways, but also allows them to interact and him to interact with them in new ways. He thinks it's an expansion of his consciousness. So he's very into it. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have experts and thought leaders who are constantly using AI. They're not letting their voice be completely out there, but they're enhancing their content with AI. You've got people like Arianna Huffington, who created the Huffington Post, one of the leaders in new age journalistic community and media community. You've got countless others who I can't say, not yet anyway, who are leaning into all of this because they realize that it's an additive experience for their users to get more content out there in more ways.
It's going to fundamentally change areas that we're not covering too. Like think about the gaming experience for people now. Like it's imminent where you'll see you're going through Roblox or Minecraft or any, massive platform. And all of a sudden you're coming across these different personalities and they're speaking and they're engaging. It's going to be pretty wild.
It will be wild. I think like the dream state is that the real dream state in one way is like, I'm talking to you right now, Mark, but Mark, you only speak French, right?
Right.
And so we're communicating, and I only speak English, but we're able to communicate back and forth in real time through AI technology. So I can hear you in your voice in English, and you can hear me in my voice in French.
How far off are we?
Probably sooner than you think. Like, I would say a year, 2 years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Really amazing. So Dustin, listen, you've given me a ton of your time today. Before we end, is there anything that you want to cover that we haven't hit today?
I think one thing to, of course, note, there are controversies always in the AI space and with new technologies. I think that with ElevenLabs, you have a company who's trying to figure it out and lead in the right way in this space. And we're excited to bring more products to market.
Yeah, like I said, Dustin, I think you guys have been tremendous. You and I are working behind the scenes outside of the show, and you've done nothing except shown like super advanced technology as well as an ethical approach to the business side, which I really appreciate. So here's how we end every episode. Every guest, before we finish, Dustin, essentially engages with me where I lead a question. I start with the name of the show, Some Future Day, and I allow for them to finish the sentence. Are you familiar with this type of format?
Yes.
Are you ready for it?
I am ready.
All right, good. So in Some Future Day, artificial intelligent agents will speak with other AI agents about
perfecting the experience of the person who is prompting for them.
I love it. Dustin Blank, thank you so much for joining me today. You're amazing. You're a good person. I love your technology. I wish you only the best of luck.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast, and I love being here.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Some Future Day. I know your time is super valuable, so I hope you learned how you can leverage emerging technology to improve your life. And exciting news, my new book, Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything, is now available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, and other major booksellers across the globe. I am so proud to share that because of your support, the book topped the charts. It became #1 bestseller in cryptocurrency, #1 bestseller in artificial intelligence, and #1 bestseller in robotics. So, if you're curious and ready to learn how AI can enhance your career, your community, and your family, get yourself a copy today.